Yeah.
And go. Hello, and welcome to Office Hours Stag Radios podcast, where we take a step beyond the lecture theatre and into the lives of the lecturers who shape our uni experience. I'm your host, Sofia Varela, and today I'm joined by...
Mel.
Woo!
Hi.
Let's focus on the person behind the lecture. So before you started publishing the books, before you started teaching, what was like the one thing about your subject that like hooked you and made you want to be like, this is what I want to do as a living in my career?
That's a good question. I mean, as cliche and as cheesy as this sounds, it was genuinely my love for creative writing, as well as my love for people. I've always been fascinated by poetry and what it can do in order to share experiences and lives and lived experiences. And I've always liked teaching, and that's what I used to do in the States before I moved over to the UK. And so the two of them merged together, I feel like ended up being perfect.
How is it different teaching in like US compared to here? Because I can imagine it's quite different.
It is really different. I would say that the biggest thing is that in the UK, university students are a lot more responsible for their own learning. So university education is a lot more hands-off. In the US, there's a lot more face-to-face time with each of the lecturers. Each of the modules have multiple assignments throughout the course of the semester, and so students are constantly keeping up with essays and quizzes and homework assignments and participation things. Whereas obviously in the UK, it's either a mid-semester and a final assessment or just a final assessment that kind of makes up the entirety of a grade. I think students in the UK are forced to have to take learning into their own hands. And so I think that's really cool. I do think the US does provide a little bit more support for students. So I think those are some differences and pros and cons to the UK versus the US. One of the biggest things is that attendance is really, really strictly mandated in the US. And so where I was teaching earlier in the US, if you missed more than 3 classes throughout the course of the semester, you have to retake the class. And so I think that would obviously not work here because students are coming and going, which is fine. With marking, obviously here in the UK, it's really hard to get a first, and that starts at a 70, whereas in the US, when students get anything below an 80%, which is our equivalent of a B, they get really upset. And so when I was marking in the US, students would typically be getting 90s, high 80s. Whereas in the UK, I had to kind of scale that back down and think of it as firsts and 2 1s and 2 2s. And so that's been a bit of an adjustment. But yeah, it's been fun. It's been fun kind of experiencing both university systems.
Yeah, I can imagine both of them are like completely different. The adjustment. So you grew up in USA and then you came over here just for teaching?
No, I grew up in East Africa.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so I moved to the US for uni at the age of 17, and then I kind of stuck around for all of my higher education and taught there for a while. And then I moved over here about 3.5 years ago.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, the time has really flown by. Yeah, I don't know, but now I feel like the UK feels like a home. There's still a lot of things I miss about the US. A lot of my friends are there. My parents are still in Tanzania, which is where I primarily grew up. And I also have my grandparents who live in Korea. So yeah, family and friends just scattered all over the place.
So I feel like with uni lecturers and just like academics in general, there's always that one kind of spark that like set everything alight. So what was like one research project that like completely consumed you and just took over and again made you focus on this is what I want to do?
It was probably a couple of years ago when I first read the novel Pachinko, which is a book by Min-Jin Lee. And it's this very epic novel that spans the course of almost 100 years. It starts off with the Japanese occupation of Korea that primarily happened between the 1910s and 1945-ish. And this story focuses on a woman, her life, her hardships through the occupation, the Korean War, her story with immigration, and just the challenges of being a woman, basically. And when I read that, I realized just how little I knew about my own family's Korean history. And so that got me interested in wanting to learn more about Korea's colonial history, the Korean diaspora. And that's the research project that I've been focusing on since then, basically. I had a chance to interview my grandparents about it because
Oh, wow.
up until then, I hadn't really thought to ask them about their lives, as self-centered as this sounds.
Yeah.
But I think oftentimes we forget that our grandparents and our parents have all gone through so many life experiences before who they are now. And so with that in mind, I asked my grandparents about their lives, what it was like for them to live through Japanese occupation, what it was like for them to survive the Korean War. And then I also interviewed my parents and asked what it was like for them to leave Korea and move to East Africa, and about all of these things. And so I think my personal history got me interested in the research element of migration, the diaspora, post-colonial studies. And all of these things I was able to express through poetry and creative writing as well, which ended up being what I am doing and researching.
So is that kind of why you kind of like fell in love with your field in a way, like how your whole passion begun? Like, what was that?
Yes and no. I think I had always been interested in creative writing as a medium. When I was young, I would write stories, like well, maybe not all kids, but like most kids do.
Yeah.
And as I got older, those turned into, really cheesy love poems that I would write to my high school boyfriend, being like, I love you. But then when I entered uni, I started to take my creative writing and my poetry a little bit more seriously. I found that, especially with my lack of identity and home, because I'm Korean and I grew up in East Africa and then I moved to the US and, now the UK. I think there was always a lack of a sense of belonging. And anytime people asked me, oh, where's home for you? It was a question that was really hard for me to answer succinctly. And so I turned to poetry to kind of express these feelings and write about my experiences as what is called a transnational individual or a third culture kid. And in doing so, I realized, poetry can do a lot in sharing lived experiences, but also connecting with other people. So that's where the creative writing side came into focus. And then, just reading about Korean history, I guess, got me interested in post-colonial and transnational literature.
The fact that you're from so many different places, like, did you find that putting all of those feelings into literature, was it like well received? Did people have certain opinions on it? Like, what was the reception of that?
I think it's been mostly positive.
Good.
I think there are people that won't understand my experiences fully, and I think that's totally fine. I feel like the beauty of creative writing is that it's meant to make people feel, and if they feel a certain way about what I write, then I feel like it's a good thing.
Yeah.
Oftentimes in my poetry, I'll mix in different languages. So even with my predominantly English poetry, I'll have phrases or words in Korean or a sentence or two in Swahili. And when people read that, they might not fully understand what I'm saying, but as long as they can feel and understand the sentiments of what brought that into existence, then I think my job is done.
You spoke about when you were younger, you used to write a lot of literature and those are like books and things like that. Did you like grow up reading books? And what was like a few books, like what recommendations would you give to students? Like books that you would, give to students? What's that books that shaped you in a way?
To answer your first question, yes, I grew up reading a lot. When I was younger, so in the 90s and early 2000s, we didn't have running water or electricity at home because this was in like very, very rural Tanzania. And so the only thing I had to do was read books. And I remember I think there was a time in maybe second grade, our teacher gave us this assignment saying, hey, I want everyone to go home over the spring break or whatever, and read as much as you want and record the number of pages that you read over the course of the week or whatever. So, I got back home and I thought to myself, oh my God, like I read so many books all the time. Anyway, so, I'm reading and I'm recording the pages and I'm reading some more, recording the pages. And I get back after the holidays and the teacher asks, okay, so like how much did people read? And I proudly raised my hand and I said, I read like 100 and something pages. And the teacher was like, oh, that's really great. And then my rival classmate, Josh, he was like, oh, you only read 100 and something pages? I read like 4 books. And I remember feeling appalled, being like, well, now I'm really embarrassed. And that spurred my motivation to keep reading more, which is so silly because my second grade rivalry fueled my passion to read even more than I already had been. Yeah, silly. But I guess as a kid and as a teenager, I read a lot of different genres. I read a lot of fantasy, a lot of folk tales. I will say The Hobbit is one of my favorite books. I think it is so well written. And obviously, Tolkien is such an amazing storyteller. And this is going to be very controversial. I have read the Lord of the Rings trilogy. I appreciate it. I think it's great literature. However, it is so long and it can be so needlessly dense, which is why I feel like The Hobbit, even though it's often, promoted as a children's book, is such a succinct, better told story. So I personally like The Hobbit more than The Lord of the Rings. Yes, come at me. So yeah, that's one of the books. I think in terms of nonfiction, there's a book called Atlas of the Heart by Brene Brown, and it's a book of emotions. And basically, Brene Brown goes through each of the categories of emotions and really puts to word how these affect our lives. And even though it's nonfiction and it can come across as really boring and dull, I think it's really important for us to be able to understand how we feel and how that affects the people around us. So I think that's a nonfiction book that I would recommend to everyone. In terms of poetry, I could honestly recommend 1,000 poetry collections, so I won't do that. One of my favorites, though, is called A Cruelty Special to Our Species, and that is by Emily Jungmin Yoon. And if you want to learn more about it, you'll have to read it yourself.
You speak about all these different kind of books. So moving away from that, what do you think is, I feel like our discipline specifically is like really, really changing. So with things like AI and ethics and all these different things, like specifically AI, like how do you think it's going to affect like the future and things about our field? Like what is your opinion and your stance on that?
Yeah, I feel like it's tricky. I know there are a lot of different opinions on AI, and I think when it comes to creativity, creative writing, literature, it can have a really detrimental effect to what is being put out into the universe for people to read. I think oftentimes when people want to take an easy route, they can go towards AI and ask it to write me a short story. But I genuinely feel like there isn't anything that is comparable to human creativity. I think the biggest thing is that I want students to know that AI can be a useful tool, but I just want everyone to be able to use it responsibly, not rely too much on it, so much to the point where it can stunt creativity or harm people that are producing work that shouldn't be replicated or try to be replicated. I'm curious to see how things will be in the next 5 to 10 years. Obviously, there are certain industries that use AI really, really frequently and I guess effectively for their field.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm curious to see what will happen.
I think progress is not linear. There's so much that goes into learning, and a lot of it is failure. And I think there's a really, really big sort of point that people don't speak about, and that is the failure. So what is like one project or experience that didn't really work in your favor, and like what did you learn from it? How did you grow?
I mean, I feel like failure comes in so many different ways and so often as well. I think as a creative writer in particular, there are plenty of times that I've sent something out to a journal or a publisher or a magazine or a website, and it just comes back with a rejection. I think at the beginning, I took every rejection so personally. And I thought to myself, oh my God, but my work would have been the perfect fit for this publisher, or my poem would have fit so well with the rest of these on this online magazine. And I think with each rejection, I've learned that because creative writing is so subjective, if it doesn't fit for the time and for the space or for the person that is reading it, then that's okay. And that's not a reflection on who I am as a writer or the writing in and of itself. Over the years, I have also become an editor of 2 journal magazines as well. And I think in being editor and editor-in-chief, I have also realized, hey, there are some pieces that I'm not going to accept for this time being. But again, it is not a personal reflection of any of these authors. And so I think it has just taught me that, I should keep sending my work out there and to not take anything, rejections in particular, too personally.
How is your working for the magazine and the journal that you work for? How has that sort of changed? Like what you do? Like how did you get into that? How did it help you?
Yeah, I think so. There's one online magazine I've been working for the past 6 years.
Oh, wow.
I started out as a poetry reader because I'd submitted my work to the magazine before as just a regular submitter. And they really liked the piece. And when I saw that they were looking for poetry readers, I signed up. And then from there, I became the co-editor-in-chief and then the editor-in-chief through just time, I guess. For the other website / magazine, I work as the Korean translations editor. And every year we basically choose a manuscript to publish. And that's really fun because we do it on a contest basis. And I think things that it has taught me is that there are so many cool people out there that are producing really beautiful work. I wish that we could accept every single piece because I think that would be really nice. But obviously there is such a limited number of spaces and publication opportunities that are available. So yeah, I think it's just shown me that there's so much cool work out there and that creativity is infinite.
Do you want to do a little promo?
Yes, come publish with us at Flora Fiction at florafiction.com.
One of the last questions I have is, obviously, if we could only go back and talk to our younger selves, what is one piece of advice that you would give to like a fresher, like the first year version of you? What would you say to someone who's coming to university?
Oh, I would say, life has so much to offer. No, I would genuinely say to not be afraid of putting yourself out there. I think something I would tell myself is to use and utilize the resources that the university offers and chat with lecturers, chat with people that are invested in your education. And I think especially during the first year, everything is all about experimentation and trying out new things and getting adjusted to life as a university student. And so I would just tell people to not be afraid and to have fun.
Oh, that's so cute. We have a little segment here where we ask the previous lecturers a certain question. What would you ask the next lecturer? So the last podcast that we had was with Dr. Lena Matthews.
Aww.
And she asked, what is a book that you absolutely hate?
Absolutely hate. Oh my goodness, this is so
very controversial.
This is really tricky. Okay, I'm gonna have to think about this for a hot second. Oh my god, Lena. This is going to be controversial.
There we go.
And I want to preface this by saying that it is a book that I loved in my childhood, but I no longer love. And I don't know if y'all can guess it, but it is the Harry Potter series. It was a really big part of my childhood, and I obviously loved the books growing up. I felt like the age at which the books were, the age at which I was growing up and the books were being released, I felt like I was right there with the characters. And I remember waiting as a high school student for the 7th and final book to come out. And, I was right there, ready. And for years afterwards, I had such a soft spot in my heart for the Harry Potter series. But because of the author, I can't love it anymore. And I think that makes me dislike the books. This also brings in the question of whether we can separate the art from the artist, the author from the books. And I think in this case, unfortunately, I am not able to separate the art from the artist. So yeah, the Harry Potter series.
Oh wow. Very
loved and hated. Yeah, very controversial indeed.
The question that you would have for the next lecture on whatever podcast we do next.
I want to know what the next lecturer's favorite module taught ever is and why.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today, and thank you for watching this episode of Office Hours. Stay tuned and follow and like and share and do all of that YouTube stuff. I've been your host, Sofia Varela. Thank you so much for joining us, and yeah, bye-bye. That was so good, honestly.
Oh my god.
We can breathe now.